Good morning, everyone. My name is Saloni, and I'm joined by my team, Melanie, Tracy, and Kiasha. And we will be presenting our work on the stormwater engagement, stormwater awareness and capacity building work that we did for Sidewalk Detroit in the Brightmoor neighborhood. Yeah. So a little bit about our client. Sidewalk Detroit is an active and integral part of the Brightmoor neighborhood, and they're also stewards of the Eliza Howell Park in Detroit. They have been very active and integral to to the neighborhood and have sort of built strong ties with them through their art and culture initiatives and also through deep engagement over the years. Their Eco Artist Residency program is what our project was part of, and it sort of focused on stormwater this year. And we worked closely with the artist Maya Davis and also supported them in their art installation, which was inspired by stormwater management. So our shared goals of community awareness and wanting to build education material around stormwater was sort of grounded in wanting to make the materials accessible, easy to understand, and like overall comprehensive. And it aimed to address these basic questions like why does our neighborhood flood? We wanted the residents to know why. We wanted the residents to be able to access the resources that are already available and help our organization build capacity. So this is an overview of what we'll be going over today in our presentation. A lot of the work was happening parallelly over these years with our research, like preparing a survey to get information from the residents, attending many community outreach events, and ultimately having these deliverables that the client can use. So for some context, Brightmoor is significantly vulnerable to flooding due to like a lot of reasons. It has a bowl-shaped typology. It is located in the lower end of the whole like River Rouge watershed, as well as Detroit's combined sewer like system has made the neighborhood even more like vulnerable to surface level flooding and basement backups in the homes of residents. So what is combined sewer overflow for people who don't know? In case of an extreme rain event, the stormwaters overwhelm the system and they combine with the sewage and overflow into a water body, which in our context is the River Rouge. And as I said, it also leads to basement backups. This issue is not unknown to the Detroit's Water and Sewage Department, and they have big plans which they have been working on since 2018, I suppose. And the critique that we started to gather from the residents was really interesting, that while this looks great on paper, there are a lot of dissatisfactions from the past projects implemented by the department, and we wanted to sort of dig deeper into that. So the best way for us to learn was not behind a computer. We did an extensive outreach to active residents, to organizations who work closely with our clients' organization, like Friends of the Rouge, Sierra Club, and we also got some folks from the Department of from the DWSD to speak with us. And what we learned is green stormwater infrastructure projects have to be treated like living systems. They are not something that can be constructed and they can maintain themselves. No, they require a lot of care and they need to be integrated into how like the ecosystem of the neighborhood, which unfortunately has failed in the past. And this is not just a Brightmoor like issue, it is an issue for the larger Rouge River watershed. And we wanted to sort of explore those two scales. And our residents were also like, we spoke to residents from Brightmoor. There were people from the upstream communities as well. And all that together sort of, so there was a lot of creative thinking involved in seeing how this work would be of best put to use. So we came up with an idea to make a documentary style education guide for the residents, which is a work in progress right now. Uh, this will be part of a social media campaign that the organization runs, which sort of brings together all the different perspectives from like the critique on ground. We were on site trying to document the projects that have failed, the projects that are on site, and trying to understand from residents uh, what are the biggest concerns that they have felt and what's the gap of information, as well as the best practices that were recommended to us by these valuable humans who were extremely kind and gave us so much time and effort. And yeah, um, we can move on to the other deliverables.
Yeah, so when we first started out in this project, we really wanted to know sort of from the community what people had experienced over the last couple of years, as well as what resources they were utilizing and what resources they didn't feel they had access to. So after talking to a lot of different people sort of concurrently, we distributed a survey to residents in the neighborhood through community outreach programming. And some of our data that came back that we felt was especially pertinent is that from the people that we surveyed, 1 in 3 had experienced home flooding in the last year, which means that not only during the 2021 floods, which are sort of the more commonly known floods, but even in the last year, 1 in 3 people had experienced home flooding. And then even more than that, about 60% of the residents were fearful of flooding in their homes. So whether or not they experienced it, they were still concerned and spent, emotional energy thinking about flooding and how it might affect them and their health and their communities and their businesses. And then common barriers to flooding preparedness were poor understanding of what it was they could possibly do to prepare for a flood in their home, and then also not knowing sort of what resources to reach out for and what resources were already available to them in order to sort of gain that information, as well as like support in general. So after administering that survey and sort of during the process of administering the survey, we also went out to a couple of different community outreach events. We went to a community dinner that was hosted by Sidewalk Detroit in the park, and then we also went to a workshop. We also engaged in the Sidewalk Festival, which is sort of the centerpiece of Sidewalk Detroit, an amazing event that happens every other year in Eliza Howell Park. And just to showcase a little bit of what we did at the festival, we created in partnership with some of the organizations we talked to a resource handout that we could hand out to residents who came to the Sidewalk event. And then we also just sort of chatted with residents about their experiences as well as handed out the surveys there. We also created some educational materials as well as engagement materials for people who are walking by to talk to them about stormwater. And then we also had them sort of respond to different prompts so we could learn a little bit more about their experiences along the way. So all in all, after doing all of the survey, the background research, and engaging with the community, we put together a zine, which we have some copies here. If you're especially interested, we have like 20 copies, so if people want one, come talk to us. But the zine is essentially a Stormwater 101 to help residents understand what stormwater issues there are, sort of what issues they can learn more about, where they can find more resources to help them in the long run, and things like renters' rights in the setting of flooding, as well as understanding what combined sewage overflow is, and then it links them to Sidewalk Detroit's website as well as our community survey, so that our survey can continue to gather information from the community for future advocacy work. In addition to that, Saloni had already mentioned that we're creating a social media campaign using the videos that we took when we were meeting with the community partners. So that's something that's upcoming, and you saw little snippets of that going on in the background while Saloni was talking, and we're excited to see how that goes. So our anticipated impact, we provided tools and identified neighborhood needs and opinions regarding flooding in the neighborhood, as well as the city plans for different adaptation strategies. We helped build capacity for Sidewalk Detroit to provide stormwater education and also collect community insights regarding flooding in the neighborhood, and we hope to increase awareness of stormwater systems and adaptation strategies for flooding via our social media video campaign. And that is our team, and we'd love to take some questions.